Let's say you're making a flyer, and you want this background color to extend all the way to the edge of the page. Well, in order for this to work, you have to actually extend it past the edge of your page onto the pasteboard. Let me show you why. To do this, I'm going to go to the Pages panel and double-click on my master page, because that's where this object is, and I'm going to go to the Layers panel and unlock the background, because otherwise I couldn't select it. I'll close those panels, and now extend this out to the edge of the page. I'm just snapping it right to the edge of the page for demonstration. Now I'm going to go into preview mode by pressing W. That simulates what it will look like when it hits press. Okay? Now let's say it extends just to the edge of the page, but when it ends up on a printing press, the paper might move just a tiny amount. I just moved it over by a point with the arrow key there. And what you end up with is a tiny sliver of white down the edge of the page. So, to compensate, printers want you to extend the object off the page onto the pasteboard. For example, I'll turn off the preview mode and I'll extend this out here. You see, now it's onto the pasteboard. This is called a bleed. What they do is they print the whole thing on a larger sheet of paper, and then they trim it down to the size that the page really should be. But how far off the page should this bleed go? Well, that's why it's helpful to have guides. When you create a new document, I'll go create a new document with a new document dialog box, you can see at the bottom of the dialog box an area for bleed guides. And if you don't see this, well, you need to click on the More Options button up here. More options, fewer options. That gives you those guide options here. And we can say we want this to be, let's say, 1 pica 6. That's about a 1/4 inch off the page. And because this link is turned on, it will automatically make sure all of these are the same value. Whenever that link is on, it will make sure the values are the same on all 4 sides. So this will actually create guides on all 4 sides. Now I'm going to cancel that because I already have a document that I need those guides on. So how do I add the guides in this document? I'll go to the File menu, choose Document Setup, and here, once again, as long as More Options is showing, we can add guides here. So I'm going to say, let's say a 1/4 inch here, and I'll turn on the Make All the Settings the Same button, that little link icon, and that sets all of them to the same. Click OK, and now suddenly you see you've got red guides on all 4 sides of our page. Those are the bleed guides. Now they're just guides. You don't have to use them, but they are helpful, especially when you want to make sure you have just the right amount of bleed. I'm going to snap these edges to the bleed guide, and now I'm pretty sure that that's going to work just fine. Let's go back to our document page, Command J on Mac or Control J on Windows. I'll press 1 and enter, and we can see our final document with the bleed hanging off the side of the page. If I press W, it goes into preview mode, as we know, and preview mode gives us an example, gives us a preview of what it will look at the trimmed size, the actual page size, so we don't see the stuff hanging off the edge of the page. That's very, very handy. Now there's one other very, very important thing that you need to know about bleeding, and that is when you print or when you export this document, you need to make sure the settings are correct for a bleed. Let's go to the print document first, and we'll click on the Marks and Bleed area. If you have used the bleed guides around, then just turn on this checkbox, the Use Document Bleed Settings checkbox. And when that's on, you automatically get the proper size for your bleeds. If you did not use those bleed guides, you just stuck stuff off the side of the page willy-nilly and hope it's going to work, well, that's fine too. Just turn off this checkbox and make sure you set these values yourself. Let's say the same 1 pica 6 values on all 4 sides. So it'll work either way, but you have to set this up. If you don't ensure that these are set up properly, well, then you're not going to get a bleed when you print. Same thing goes for when you export the document. Let's say we'll go to File, Export, and we'll say we want this to be a PDF file. In here, we have to do the same thing. Go to the Marks and Bleeds area and either use Document Bleed Settings or set them manually yourself. In this case, we did use bleed guides, so I simply turn on that checkbox, and I know that the bleed will extend off to the edge of the pages in my PDF file. We can see this by turning on some marks. Let's go ahead and turn that on and export this file. And I'm going to have it view the PDF after exporting. Click Export, and it will make the PDF file, launch Acrobat, and show me the PDF that I've created. Here's the final PDF with registration marks, trim marks where it's going to get trimmed down, and bleed marks where you see the edge of the bleed is going to be. When you're bleeding objects off the side of your page, you should always talk with your printer first to make sure they're set up to print bleeds. Also, find out how large the bleed should be. Otherwise, you may not get the results that you expect.